Hello, I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Careers. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Busting 5 Early Payments Program Myths that Create Lost Opportunity. I would like to thank our webinar partner, Tipalti, whose strong commitment to thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible today. Early payment programs have a stigma attached to them that can make many finance teams roll their eyes. The grand promise is made, making payables cost neutral while helping to eliminate supplier cash flow issues are often difficult to achieve and not worth the effort. Today, we will dispel 5 myths about early payment programs that can help you position them as a dramatic differentiator for your organization. These myths are: early payments programs are difficult to manage, suppliers will not participate, financing will be difficult, the discount won't be worth it, and the finance team is not ready. Before I delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about Treasury Careers, cover a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to review our learning objectives as they serve as the pillars of our value proposition to you for spending your valuable time with us today. Treasury Careers offers content and resources that empower Treasury professionals to own their career success. I encourage you to visit our website at www.treasurycareers.com. Now on to the exciting housekeeping items. The slides are currently available under the handouts area in your GoToWebinar control panel. If you have any issues downloading the slides, please send me a message in the questions area or send me an email. For those of you interested in CTP credit for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions today and remain on for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions concerning CTP credit, please send me an email to ernie@360thoughtleadership.com. We'd like to hear from you today, so I encourage you to ask questions at any time in the questions box of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions during the Q&A session at the tail end of the webinar. If I do not get to your question, fear not, we will follow up with you after the webinar. Finally, we appreciate your consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable times. Our learning objectives for today. After the webinar, we'd like you to be able to identify opportunities to improve working capital management at your company, be able to separate the myths and realities of early payments programs, and to quantify the potential ROI of leveraging early payment programs at your company. Another objective that I have for my webinars is for you to take an action. So I'm not going to be able to teach you everything you need to know about early payments programs. We are going to be able to educate you in terms of the right questions to ask, the right conversations to have, and the next steps in investigating how early payment programs might benefit your company. So it's really important for you to take that action. So whether that's sending a LinkedIn request to myself or my co-speaker, sending an email to a colleague, taking a colleague out to lunch to learn more about your AP or early payment program opportunities. So it's very important that we inspire you to take an action today. Now I want to welcome my co-speaker to the webinar, as she is going to help me deliver on our learning objectives today. It's my pleasure to welcome Shauna Stive to the webinar, as she'll be helping me, again, deliver on these learning objectives. She is Director of Product Marketing at Tipalti. She has over 7 years of finance experience and currently helps finance teams automate and improve their AP success. Shauna graduated with a BS in Commerce from Santa Clara University. Shauna, it's great to have you with us here on the webinar today. Welcome.
Great. Thanks so much, Ernie. Happy to be here.
Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit to our agenda, set our little roadmap for the presentation today, how we're going to cover our learning objectives. First, we're going to talk about the CFOs and the supply chain. Why now? Why is this getting so much more attention? And the answer may surprise you, but I don't want to spoil that surprise just yet. We'll talk about early payments programs. We'll give you an overview of how they work and the opportunity they present to most companies. And then we'll pivot to the myths and realities of early payments programs. And then Shauna will join us and really explain to us how these programs actually work, which is very important. I know as practitioners, we always hear these great things, but really how these programs actually work and function. And then we'll wrap things up with some closing thoughts and some additional resources. I always like to offer additional resources because, as I said, our time here is limited. I'm not going to be able to answer all of your questions and fix all of your issues. However, these additional resources are going to be extremely valuable to you as you navigate your journey to hopefully adopting early payments programs. I'm going to kick things off with a quote from E&Y. CFOs and supply chain leaders are creating alignment between strategy, finance, tax, and operations, unlocking hidden value within the organization and strengthening financial performance. We're starting to lay the groundwork for the value proposition of these early payments program. Now I'm going to get a little bit inspirational on you treasury leaders, you AP leaders, and even you CFOs. Wouldn't you like to partner with procurement and AP to help guide your CFOs or the CFO your strategy on managing supply chain risk? Oftentimes, there's inherent things that are odds. Procurement often wants to pay things sooner, have these great supplier relationships, and sometimes in accounts payable, we're often taught we want to delay our payments as soon as late as possible, hang on to that money. But the good news is that there's a way to align those things, because what we're finding out, and companies are finding out with the visibility into accounts payable, there are actually great financial incentives to actually lower the amount of time that it takes us to pay our suppliers. It's actually valuable to us. Also, would we like to improve working capital, free cash flow, cost of goods sold, and overall financial performance? Absolutely. We'll talk about how early payments programs can certainly do that, but also an underlying key success factor in successful early payments program is AP automation and accounts payable excellence. Wouldn't you like to unlock potential savings? And where we'll see a lot of those potential savings is on the accounts payable side, which we'll talk more about much later. So now we are going to go ahead and switch things up a little bit and take your pulse, launch our first polling question. If you had $250,000 to spend to improve the value delivered by Treasury at your company, what would you do? Allocate it most to technology, talent, process, or equally across all of those? I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you after CTP credits for today's webinar, you will have to answer all of our polling questions here today. I want to remind you that we can take your questions at any time in the questions area of our GoToWebinar control panel. We have a great expert in Shauna at our disposal, so I encourage you to take the opportunity to ask her questions and really tap into that knowledge. I'm going to go ahead and leave our polling question up for another 5 seconds or so. Then we're going to take a quick look at the results, and then we're going to get back to the meat of the presentation. We'll get back to why supply chain finance, why now? Why is this becoming even such a hot topic? So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Go ahead and share the results. We have 49% allocate evenly to upgrade people and process. And then it's a little about what I would like to see, or what I'd expect to see. I would have maybe expected a little bit more into upgrading talent, but it's about where I would think as far as on the technology side. And I think if I asked you this question at the end of the webinar, we might get a little bit more on the technology side, because the technology side can really offer us tremendous benefits. And it's really the technology, AP automation and beyond is really, really cost effective now. And companies of all sizes are realizing the value in leveraging this technology. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to our content here. So let me offer a little bit of color around why this is such a hot topic now. As to why more companies of all sizes are looking to the benefits of supply chain financing. I think it is in large part due to the increased attention being paid to accounts payable, as AP automation has become a hot topic in Treasury and finance. An example, I am often asked to speak on Treasury topics and CFO topics, and prior to the past 16 months, I had never been asked to speak on AP automation. Over the last 16 months, I have been asked to speak probably 10 or 15 times, and with good reason. So that just kind of speaks to to why this topic is important, and we'll talk about why it's good that companies are looking at accounts payable. Most companies, I think, are originally drawn into AP automation by the potential invoice processing costs, but then they soon realize the value that can be realized from leveraging technology to improve supplier relationships, to take control of how they make payments, so check, to ACH, maybe a purchase card, and when and how they pay through dynamic discounting and supply chain financing. So this really appeals to all parts of office of the CFO. We have the accounts payable part, right? We want to drive costs down. That should engage our CFO. But what engages our CFO even more is when we start to talk about working capital optimization, impacting the bottom line, improving our cash forecasting. We get to our treasury folks in here, value of the cost of capital, cash deployment. So as you see, I think a lot of this momentum is making us look at the whole payments, how and why we make payments. And then part of that, which can offer potential value, is in having good relationships with our supplier so we can negotiate with them in areas in terms of discounting and how and when we pay them. So a little bit more color on this. Again, I mentioned mentioned a lot of these before, but real-time data for cash management has become more of a priority for CFOs. The technology, whether it's AP automation, whether it's treasury workstations, we're getting more visibility here. And then increased visibility into AP and procurement exposes great opportunity for us to lower our onboarding and invoice processing costs, again, on the AP side. And then also point out that supply chain financing requires the integrated approach. And part of that great integrated approach is going to be that we are going to endeavor to have straight through accounts payable processing. And then companies are realizing the strategic value of improving supplier relationships. Prior to a few years ago, what I saw in the technology space was a lot of focus on customer relationship management. And I was sitting over here in Treasury going, okay, eventually we're going to start to realize that we need to pay more attention to supplier relationship management and the value. When I was in manufacturing as a treasury manager, the relationships with our suppliers were just as important as those with even some of our top customers. So in terms of improving the supplier relationships, there are many benefits, a couple of which, one is it's good. We can avoid disruptions in that supply chain. And then the other two things, which we'll talk about today, are being able to collaborate and a lot of times and educate our suppliers into the value that switching payment types and considering supply chain financing and early payments programs offer our suppliers. So in order for them to even consider adopting the programs or being receptive to our advice and showing them the benefits, they have to be willing to listen to the value proposition that we can show to them. So without that good supplier relationship, a lot of the strategic value that can be delivered by accounts payable and treasury can be mitigated. And then mentioned before, more efficient AP can create opportunities to improve working capital management. Talked about taking control of how and when we make payments. Also, visibility improves our cash forecast. Don't we like to have a good cash forecast? We don't want to borrow money when we don't have to, and we don't want to enter into foreign exchange transactions when we don't have to as well. And then maybe one of the biggest drivers is the right technology is affordable to any business and is cost effective. And so I think that's been an inherent barrier that we're starting to get over. And then the other inherent barrier is just folks being educated as to the business case that can be made, again, across any business size, across industries as well. So this gives us, that motivation, that why consider it, why now? So that brings us to our next polling question. Going to level set the audience and see where you might be in terms of your understanding and deployment of early payment programs. So asking you if you have an early payment programming. Options there: no, you don't have one, don't plan to do so. No, but you plan to do so later. You may have them, but it's not much of a focus. yes, you use them extensively, or E, you don't know. Again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you after CTP credit, for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions. And once again, I am going to let you know that we appreciate your consideration in asking questions in the questions box of your GoToWebinar control panel. We certainly enjoy your questions, makes the webinar more interactive, and gives you an opportunity to tap the expertise of our co-speaker, Shauna today. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to go ahead and share. And so we have 27%. I don't know. So hopefully we will motivate all of you after the webinar that it's worth your while to find out. And if not, find out the reasons why that might not be the case. We have 30% at yes, it's not currently a focus. Hopefully there will be some motivation to take a little bit of a deeper look. And then we have 22% no, we have no plans to do so. So Shauna, let me bring you in here and let me know, do you have any initial thoughts about the results and maybe a reason why we still see 22% that know and have no plans to do so?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a perception that supply chain early payment programs are really hard to implement and manage, and they have not been very successful when a company has tried to implement it. So there's almost kind of that negative perception around it. And with the technology that was available before, it was a lot harder to get those programs up and running. So that's probably why I think 22% aren't really currently interested in implementing one because of those preconceived notions based on prior experience or just kind of overall sense of what the program would take to implement. So hopefully when we walk through our presentation today, kind of change that mindset a little bit. Hi, Ernie. I'm not sure if anyone else in the audience is having issues, but we cannot hear you.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. So in this slide, I'm just trying to get the attention of all of you a little bit, especially our senior leaders and our CFOs and directors of finance. So this shows the aggregate market opportunity, some data from McKinsey. So the amount of opportunity that's being captured today is in the $2 billion range, and the further potential is $18 billion. So where you stand kind of depends on where you sit, but this may give you some motivation on an aggregate level to take another look at the potential that might be out there. So again, we can see there's a huge market potential for supply chain finance, and as Shauna mentioned, there's opportunity, and companies of all sizes can benefit from it, especially due to the technology that we've seen advancement, and it's just no longer a concept for Fortune 500 companies. Now we'll turn to what early payments programs are, how they work, and the potential benefits they offer to companies and their suppliers. Just an overview, early payments can be a catch-all phrase. All scenarios whereby suppliers offer the opportunity to be paid in advance of an invoice due date in exchange for a discount. Two predominant forms, types, early payment programs, dynamic discounting, and supply chain financing. Our accounts payable folks may be a little bit more familiar with the dynamic discount, whereas our finance and treasury folks may be a little bit more familiar with that supply chain finance. Both rely on a dual arbitrage. I'll be honest, I just wanted to have arbitrage in the presentation so I could say arbitrage. So the dual arbitrage is that there's a gap between the net payment terms and invoice approval date. So an important point to bring up here is that we can have terms such as 210, net 30. However, we need to be able to process that invoice and get it paid right, within those 10 days. Otherwise, it's not really an option. So this speaks to initially to the importance of AP automation and your efficiency. So again, there's got to be that gap there, but we also need to be able to process our payments, invoice approval, affect those payments in a way that is consistent. And the tighter, the more window that we have, the more opportunity that we have in terms of potential to come to agreement with suppliers on a program. And then a gap between the cost of capital between the payer and the payee, or think of it, the buyer, the supplier, and the payer, payee are used synonymously. So again, just a quick overview of how these work. I love these diagrams. The next few slides are things that I would definitely print out if I was on the webinar, and then also Shauna will probably give us a little bit more color on how these exactly work in today's world with the technology, but dynamic discounting will start. The supplier submits an invoice, it comes in for approval. We do some internal analysis. Our team might come up with, the technology might allow us to offer a discount. Okay, for 1% discount, we'll pay you 2 days late, 2 days early, 3 days earlier, or net 10 is just an example down here if the offer was accepted. So we're having this negotiation, and the technology allows us to have this negotiation in almost real time. So I'd say just in general, you may have invoices that have 210 net 30. That's really a static. It's a discounting opportunity. You can move that to another level. If you have companies that are offering you 210 net 30, you might be able to introduce them to a program where you can do some dynamic discounting and see if you can change those terms. If the offer is accepted, then we go ahead and make that supplier payment within 10 days. So the two parties are involved, are us and our suppliers, and in essence, the company is the one who is supplying the financing in that case. Supply chain finance, we will introduce another party into the system. It's another way of capturing early payments discount. In this case, third-party funds here and can be different parties. It can be a bank, and Shauna will talk about the ways that we are introducing third parties into the system a little bit later, which are different than what we used to see in only banks. So third-party funds are used to allow a supplier to sell an invoice to a bank or other financial institution as soon as they are approved by the buyer, and this allows the buyer to pay later and the supplier to get their money sooner. So what we're doing is we're introducing the bank into the process here. Our supplier is getting paid sooner, and we're introducing the third party in that the bank is actually affecting that payment. And then we are, in a lot of cases, the way this works is we are extending our terms to later the amount of the invoice that we need to pay to our bank. So again, the key difference is just the parties involved. There are 3 parties involved. And I think Shauna will do a much better job of explaining how supply chain finance really works in our new world of technology. This is a slide I find useful for myself to remind myself just dynamic discounting versus supply chain finance in terms of control, the rates, and some of the complexities that are involved. So if you look at dynamic discounting, it's more control for the buyers, maybe gives us the ability to negotiate a better rate. In some sense, it can be complex. If there's not the right technology involved. It requires us to take on the risk. This to be effective really requires streamlined accounts payable. There can be limitations to whether it's scalable, and then there can be limits to who can participate based on the supplier characteristics. The pros are the supply chain risk. There's less buyer risk. We're introducing a third party, and oftentimes the discounts are fairly set, fairly common there. And then cons, suppliers, they might not qualify. There's more paperwork, not scalable, and then there can be limits to who can participate. Now, a point I want to make on dynamic discount is the fact that it requires streamlined accounts payable. To me, we'll talk about this a little later, having streamlined accounts payable can be tremendously valuable to your company. So investing in accounts payable automation, enabling early payments discounts can just be a way to help justify that investment in AP automation, which helps improve supplier relationships. And good supplier relationships are kind of a precursor to effective early payments programs. So some benefits to leveraging EP programs. So if you're thinking about looking into this, you want to make that business case. If you're not the CFO, you're in Treasury AP. You want to talk to your CFO about why you want to look into this. It can help you attract and retain suppliers. You can leverage this during contract negotiation. It can reduce potential supply chain disruption. It can also increase our supplier loyalty. I mentioned just a few moments ago, helps justify investments in automation. And then for those treasury professionals in the audience and finance, makes us more strategic. It improves our capital management, supplier relationships, and taking the manualness out of the system. Manualness, that might be a new word. As you automate accounts payable, you're going to positively impact productivity. You're going to improve your cash forecasting, and then you get improved visibility into levels and timings of currency exposures, and that's going to facilitate better risk exposure management. So that technology really facilitates that visibility, and that's really what opens up opportunities on many levels, including reducing costs and improving supplier relationships. The benefits to suppliers. We have to, obviously, for them to participate, there has to be benefits to them. We have to be able to effectively communicate that to our suppliers. So we have to know how to do the dance with our suppliers to get them to engage. It puts suppliers in control of their cash, facilitates predictable, reliable cash flow. It can help them avoid risky and expensive funding methods, and it can avoid adversarial situation with customers. One thing that I really haven't mentioned that I would like to mention now is that one of the things that can really improve supplier relationships is finance getting more involved in the supplier relationships. When I was in Treasury, the only time the CFO would ever get involved is if there was some sort of issue that is going on. So it would be good for the CFO to be involved and also possibly develop CFO to CFO relationships with your suppliers as well. So that really improves the overall relationship. So finance, you should be aware and get involved. The other benefits to suppliers allows flexibility in when to accept discounts, and it can lower accounts receivable processing costs, especially as we talk about automating accounts payable. One of the things that we are able to do now is push over that remittance information. A lot of times companies fall in love with checks because of the remittance information, but once they realize that they can get that same information in a much easier and more quality fashion, they definitely will start to look at potentially even moving away from lock boxes. So can be a huge benefit. So why isn't everyone doing it? This is the greatest thing ever, right? So some of it can be on the accounts payable side. We don't have that level of automation. Slow invoice processing, again, you may not have opportunities. You may not even be able to process an invoice within 10, 15 days. You can have understaffed AP departments. This obviously can be mitigated through automation. There can be some financing complexities with your company's capital structure. You can have issues with your data, the data hygiene that you have. You can have asymmetry of information with your suppliers, which is definitely a pain point. You can have negotiation ping pong between yourself and your suppliers, non-effective communication. You can be leveraging disconnected technologies, and there's complicated reconciliations between what discounts are offered on when they're taken, why they're taken, and if they're taken. So those are all reasons. And then another reason that they're not taken is that there is a visibility we talked about. So many companies have limited visibility into existing discount opportunities. So one of the things that I would encourage folks to do is, if you're not in accounts payable, to go to your AP team and ask them what their visibility is into the discounts. And then an AP metric I really love is when companies look at the percent of discounts that are being taken, it almost always makes sense to take those discounts. And then why it's compelling is that the percent of invoices may be small, but the dollar opportunities can be significant. And then the discount percentage may be small, but the dollar amount of opportunities in aggregate. So you can have a low percent, high amount, or a higher percentage and a low amount. So you don't just want to dismiss this, you really want to look into the opportunity here. And again, what we'll see is if you have AP automation in line, your AP is running very well, and then you're able to align with the right partner to help you execute in terms of a dynamic discounting or SCF program, those adoption rates just skyrocket. Traditionally, what you'll see in research is you'll see 2%, maybe 5%, but what solution providers are starting to see is they're starting to see 30%, which is amazing. So now let's look at our early payment program miss. The finance team is not ready. Programs are difficult to manage. Financing will be difficult. Suppliers will not participate. Discounts won't be worth it. So, early payment program myth number one, finance is not ready. So, before we delve into that first myth, we're going to go ahead and launch our next polling question, asking you where your company is currently at in terms of the process of AP automation. As we mentioned earlier, not having our AP house in order can certainly be an inherent barrier to adopting early payment programs. So again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. My friends on the webinar interested in CTP credit, you will have to answer all of our polling questions here today. And I want to take a moment, and I'll do it again later, to thank everyone for joining us on the webinar today. We know the NCAA tournament is on today, so we really appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck in your brackets as well. I'm going to go ahead and close the polling question here in another few seconds, and we'll take a quick look at the results. Go ahead and close that polling question. Go ahead and share the results. So it looks like we have 44% either don't know or just starting the discovery phase. So again, hopefully we will motivate you to take a look at that. And these things can be done at the same time, right? You can AP automation. This can all be a comprehensive program. It doesn't mean that you have to do an AP automation transformation project or do early payments program, but it really helps to have your house in order. So we have 44% don't know, discovery phase, and then 33% are implementing or have AP automation in place. So you are probably a little bit more ready and probably ready to go with leveraging early payments programs. So Shauna, what do you think? Is there anything that sticks out to you here at all about what you expected?
Yeah, I would say kind of generally as a whole across the finance department, the AP team is probably last on the list to get technology, but it's interesting because it's not hard to implement. It can cause really big time savings, cost savings, and there's other benefits, and it's not that expensive. And I think getting the rest of your procurement and AP processes in place before you attempt an early payments program is going to be really important. Because as you said, Ernie, if it takes you 20 days to approve an invoice, well, you're not going to be able to take advantage of those discounts. So making sure you have that automated and a really effective flow is going to be important within EP program.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to our myth and said, as we mentioned, finance is not ready. We would say you will be ready if you have your automated your invoice to pay. I love this diagram as well. So one of the things, if you have not done this yet as a company, I would strongly encourage you to map your process from end to end, people, process, and systems involved, and also figure out how much it costs you to process an invoice as well, as that will open up opportunities to improve your AP invoice processing. But this is what it looks like. So Myers-Squibb's invoice, OCR, character recognition. Those of us in Treasury, we know this from Lockbox. You might have, if some outside vendors involved, we might have them involved here. Router, one-click sign-off. Wouldn't that be nice? How about that workflow? Invoice sent to AP. AP schedules invoice payment. Hopefully that's a straight through process. We would all love for our AP process to look like that. So finance is not ready. This is something that will definitely prepare us in being ready to leverage these types of programs. And then again, we want to have an automated invoice systems in place. So this one at your company, it might not be a myth right now, but we certainly want to turn this into a myth. So you need to have access to surplus balance sheet capital or third-party capital to fund your program. It's nice if your suppliers already use or will use a supplier portal. So sometimes your AP automation suppliers will help you in onboarding your suppliers into a portal. It opens up a world of opportunities, which Shauna will discuss. Ability to reconcile your programs within your ERP system. You know how to drive adoption from suppliers, but again, you can also lean on some of your AP automation and technology providers. You need to have some knowledge to determine discount rates, but what this really gives you is a checklist to be sure that you are ready. So this might serve as a good checklist. So if finance is not ready, maybe a myth for you, may not, but it's really good to have this checklist. And just like anything else, when you are ready to go, you can really, the amount of work you put in beforehand is really going to determine how much ROI you realize and how quickly. So early payments programs are difficult to manage. We've touched on this a little bit. So, but the good news is today's early payments programs, as Shauna mentioned earlier, they don't require extensive and complex systems integration. They don't acquire additional banking relationships you must management, and they often don't involve additional lines of credit, which also means if you're a treasury, you have to find a way to feed them bank fees as well. Another reason we can make it shouldn't be difficult to manage. You can make supplier adoption part of an integrated AP flow. You can streamline messaging and adoption of the program. We talked about this. You can educate your supply chain. You can engage your suppliers digitally. You can get the discounting right by leveraging an automated process. And then you can automate maintenance and program execution. So all these things, what's the theme we're getting here? If we adopt and leverage the right technology, this myth really can go away. So that myth too will go away. Financing will be difficult. So let's just take a look. There's two things. I'll go out traditional EP program before we have the technology and the automated. You'll see much more value in your automated EP program. So I'll focus on the automated EP program, which is really dispels the myth. It's a process, not a loan. You avoid one-to-one negotiation, a scalable process, standardized discounts. You offer the program to more or even all suppliers. You open that up, the adoption rate can go up significantly, and then the third-party lenders use volume to reduce risk. So if we look at that automated EP program, that's where that myth that financing will be difficult goes away. Finance will not participate. Let's go ahead and launch our next polling question, which is important to our next portion of the presentation. How would you characterize the overall state of your company's relationships with suppliers? Not good, poor communication, constant issues. Not good, but getting better. Acceptable, good, we communicate and collaborate effectively. And then I don't know or not available. In order to be mindful of our time, I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for only another 5 seconds or so. So please be mindful. Again, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering the polling questions, and we can still take your questions in the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'm going to go ahead and close and save. And so we've got a little bit. I'm glad to see we have 34% of you in the good. We communicate, collaborate effectively. But I would say that there's a tremendous opportunity here for all of you, but especially those who are only in the acceptable category. I'm hoping we've given you some good tips to improve those relationships and shown you the value in doing so. So this can be tremendously important. So looking at some of those supplier pain points that we want to take away, how we take away those pain points, improve those relationships, some data from McKinsey again. You want to make the onboarding process easy. We want to educate our suppliers. We want to have an easy to use platform. And so those are a few of McKinsey's. I like my own. Some of the pain points that we want to avoid. Onboarding, you can get them into these portals. We can avoid delays in receiving tax forms, supplier data quality, incorrect payments. We can avoid issues of lack of visibility, asymmetric information, untimely communication, and we can also, with visibility into supplier communications and payment patterns and everything related to our suppliers, we can make ourselves proactive instead of reactive, and that's huge. When we can turn our relationship into a proactive relationship, that really increases the value of the relationship, that the value that our suppliers see with our relationship. And then just the art of supplier engagement. You strengthen your supplier relationships, easier to engage in EP programs, early payments. We talked about this. Effective supplier onboarding, effective communication, being proactive, and getting finance involved in supplier relationships. So this is a good slide to print out. Those 4 things: supplier onboarding, visibility into communications, being proactive, and being involved in our finance department. And also, just say this, I could have said this first, but in general, you will find that the vast majority of your suppliers will participate, will accept a discount for early payment. Myth number 5, the discounts aren't worth it. Just quickly here, low adoption, high adoption. So it just shows a couple. So let's say you have 10K early payments per year, an average transaction of 2,000, 2% discount. The results, if you get 5% supplier adoption, that's $20,000. 2%, all right. What if we have high adoption? Next other scenario, 10K, again, 2K, our average discount is 1%, but our adoption goes up quite a bit. So you can see really quickly that these numbers are, these numbers, 20K, 40K, those are really significant numbers for us to have. So now it is my pleasure to hand the floor over to Shauna, who's going to talk about the ROI of early payments programs and also the mechanics. Shauna, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Great, thanks, Ernie. So yeah, as treasury professionals, looking at the numbers, evaluating them, understanding the organizational impact and the ROI of an early payments program is really important. And you'll see here, there's a web page that we're going to give you access to after the webinar that allows you to just do that. It's going to allow you to calculate the costs and the benefits to help you understand how things like supplier adoption rates and discount rates and salaries of your accounts payable or treasury personnel, and how the spend that's eligible for early payments, how all of those different levers affect the program as a whole. And that really helps you understand the levers that are really going to drive your early payments program success. So I really encourage you to check that out afterwards, play with the different levers and see how your organization might be able to benefit from early payments. And now kind of looking at comparing and contrasting dynamic discounting, supply chain financing, and the modern early payment solutions of today, is that today's early payment programs really offer the best of both worlds. So you're still going to get the margin improvement, you're still going to get the flexibility with your working capital because you're not using your own balance sheet to fund the early payments, but you're also not having to deal with multiple banking relationships to manage the program either. And that's a really big win because that can add a lot of complexity and overhead and time. And really kind of this new breed of technology, it's really marked by broad supplier adoptions. And the reason why is because it's ease of use on both the buyer side to be able to offer these early payments, but also for suppliers to accept them. And kind of that's what makes today's technologies a lot more accessible, a lot more sustainable, and a lot more profitable. So now if we take a look at going a little bit further into the ease of use side of things and why that drives broad adoption across the supplier base, I want to kind of walk you through how an early payment program actually works. So you, being the buyer, first off, you get to decide which suppliers are eligible for the early payments and what percentage of the payment amount can actually be paid early. So you're not forcing all of your suppliers to join a program, and you have the flexibility to determine who you can extend those offers to. And then once you approve the payment, the supplier gets an email that has the early payments offer embedded directly in it. And that's important because communications with the supplier, like via automated email notifications, that's already kind of embedded in the workflow between the payer or the buyer and the supplier. So it's not a big change to the communication process. They're used to receiving email communications when they've been paid or when they need to submit a tax form, different things like that. So now we're just adding another email to the mix, and that's the ability to have them get paid early. And what's also great about today's tools is the discounts amounts are going to vary. It's based on the supplier's payment method, their geographical location, and the number of days early that they're going to be paid. So that intelligence is all baked into the tool. You don't have to write out any business rules to manage all of that. It does it for you on its own. And then once the supplier accepts the early payment offer, all they have to do is, again, click from the email. That payment is automatically processed. And also what's great here is I mentioned earlier about no banking relationships and you're not managing, you're using your own balance sheet cash to fund it, is that a financing partner is going to cover the early payment balances. So then when it comes time for the original bill due date, you just pay the bill as you normally would. And then of course, you're going to earn a portion back on every dollar paid early through a referral fee. And then that's going to allow you to take those referral fees, those dollars, and reinvest back into your business and your business, your growth, whatever your objectives may be. So kind of the overall trend here is that it's not a big change for buyers. It's not complicated for suppliers either. And that's kind of what it explains the difference in adoption rates between the traditional programs and the modern programs of today. So it's the fact that it's seamless and it's frictionless for both buyers and suppliers. And here at Tipalti, our conservative rate is 35%. So we say that 35% of our customers, they've had their suppliers adopt at that rate. But we've actually had months where 50% of suppliers were accepting those early payment offers. And of course, the type of suppliers that you're addressing these to, short tail versus long tail is going to impact the adoption rates, but the average across our customer base is 35%, and kind of that's a testament to the ease of use and what's going to help make your program more profitable. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Ernie. So now you kind of understand how the programs actually work in practice, and he's going to give you some more tips around early payment programs and closing thoughts here before we get to the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Shauna. Just want to let everyone know that in the post-webinar survey, you will have the opportunity to be connected with Shauna with a few mouse clicks. So if you would like to have a conversation with Shauna and learn more about how these programs work and how that adoption rate goes from 5 to 35%, you can indicate that in your survey. So a lot of times after I do webinars, and I've done several hundred, sometimes people will say, I don't know how to get started. So I wanted to get this in before we had some closing comments and a little time for Q&A. The action plan. Identify the early payments program you want to implement based on your company's needs. Do some intelligence on your suppliers. Establish rates for all your suppliers. You want to collaborate with a partner that enables suppliers to join the early payment program easily with every transaction, and then automatically draws discounts from payment. So this gives you a good action plan. And another part of that action plan I would have to add is that AP review and AP automation and seeing where you're at with AP automation, because as we've talked about more than once, having AP excellence in-house is really valuable to recognizing tremendous value in improving working capital from early payments programs. So some closing thoughts. I love to give specific advice, supplier relationships. Again, this is a good slide to print out. The onboarding process, make it easier. Educate your suppliers. Pay attention to your supplier contracts, which means collaborate with procurement. Maintain open lines of communication. You want to minimize the asymmetry of information between yourself and your suppliers. Provide proactive and consistent, and then facilitate visibility into communications with suppliers. In IEP Success, I like to say you know how to dance with your suppliers, communicate the benefits, understand the inherent barriers that may exist to adoption for each supplier, and communicate that you understand that, but how the value should overcome those barriers. explore opportunities to make adoption part of a program, to make payments more efficient for suppliers, check, to an electronic payment type, and also enrollment in an EEP program, and then partner with e-payable solution providers to improve your dance moves or dance in your place when it makes sense. They have a lot of expertise in engaging suppliers, and again driving up these adoption rates, which if you've ever tried to do this before on your own in-house, it can be a little bit frustrating and time consuming. More closing thoughts. Again, automate invoice to pay reconciliation, discount program elements to achieve stronger supplier adoption, a wide net, supplier controls, integrated communication. You want a rebate system, and you want reconciliation accounting for your splits. All of these resources have hyperlinks into them. They offer a lot more color around the content today. One I particularly like to point out is the Tipalti Early Payments Program cost benefit modeler that we showed, that Shauna showed. This to me as a treasury practitioner would have got me extremely excited, because it's really cool to do these back of the envelope calculations. You can get your team around the computer, your finance, your AP, your CFO, and just kind of play around a little bit. And it can really show you really quickly how this is really probably going to make sense for your company. So now I'm going to go ahead and transfer us to our Q&A. We have a few minutes for Q&A. A reminder, we can still take your questions in the questions box of your GoToWebinar control panel. So first question, I am going to go ahead and actually the first few we'll direct to Shauna. Shauna, a few of our attendees have international suppliers. Can they leverage a system like Tipalti to pay them and for early payment programs?
Yeah, definitely. Not only do we support global payments to 190 countries, 120 currencies across 6 payment methods, we can also do early payments to international suppliers too in their local currency.
Okay, wow. So just to be clear, as a treasury practitioner here, so in a sense, it almost seems like companies could in some cases eliminate the need for global bank accounts.
Yeah, definitely. So with Tipalti, we have you can have one single virtual banking account and pay the suppliers around the world from that. So we've had customers where they've had 5 different banking relationships with different banks so they can pay out their suppliers around the world, and that was reduced to one with Tipalti.
Okay, great. Another question for you. So in terms of the myths that we covered today, what is the myth that you most often that you often encounter when you're having conversations with potential clients? And these might be the same. And also the second part would be, which one do you think is the most like far off from being true? They might be the same.
Yeah, I would say the one that we often hear the most is it's too difficult to manage. I don't really want to try, or maybe because they've worked at a prior job or they tried to offer an early payments program and it just didn't work. So there's that perception that it just doesn't work. So they don't want to try again. And of course, this makes sense. You know, you don't want to be the one to try to implement a program and then have it completely fail. So kind of that's what I would say is the number one kind of objection we hear around early payments programs. And as far as to the second one about which one is the one that's most far off, I would again say it's that it's difficult to manage. Like it's difficult to manage if you don't have the right automation in place with your procurement and your accounts payable processes, and if you're using legacy technology. But if you have your accounts payable and procurement in order, and if you're using a modern technology, it's not difficult to implement at all. Like we've had clients who have instituted their early payments program and got it up and running within like 5 days because it's very seamless. Like we at Tipalti manage that process of getting everything set up and helping suppliers on board. So very easy there.
Great, thank you very much. A couple of questions around this, which I have this question myself. Can you, I mean, it's just almost mind-blowing that the adoption rates, you know, when people do it themselves, go from 5% to 35%. Can you share with us again, maybe one of the 2 key factors that really drives that adoption rate?
Yeah, definitely. So we always get that same reaction, like it can't be that high because with typical dynamic discounting or supply chain finance programs, 5% is really good. I'd say the reason we're able to get to 35% is because the process is so seamless. Our customers have already automated the process of onboarding their suppliers. They've already automated the process of processing their invoices. So they can get them approved for payment in 1 or 2 days. And because it's not any extra effort on the buyer's part to actually send these early payment offers. All you have to do is decide which supplier wants to get paid, and Tipalti handles all of the work of sending the emails, calculating the discounts on the sliding scale based on the number of days, seeing where they're located. So it's really easy to do. That's what I would say is kind of how we're able to get to that 35% adoption rate with our customers and their suppliers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think I'll go ahead, in order to be mindful of our time, ask Shauna one final question here. And we've talked about a lot of advances, in the technology here. Can you just maybe, if they've already been implemented this year, talk to some of the newest and most impactful changes in the technology that have either already come out this year or people can expect to see later in the year?
With early payments programs, you mean just in
Sure,
general technology trends?
sure, yes.
Yeah, I would say kind of from our perspective at Tipalti, our main kind of thing around this is the ease of use, because we know we're not going to continue to see these high adoption rates if it's not easy for both buyers and suppliers. So we're always looking for ways to streamline that process. So kind of something that we're working on here is right now the early payments email, they click the offer and they see the results on our webpage, but giving them the ability to see, they adjust the discount amount on they see the discount amount on their own by changing on a sliding scale, like a graph type thing directly in the email. So then the supplier has the ability to say, oh, okay, maybe I don't want to take my payment today, but in 5 days, because that's closer to the payment amount, then I'll take my payment early. So that's just helping you as a buyer out, because that's, you're getting money back on the referral fees, and also just helping improve those supplier relationships and giving your supplier the most flexibility that makes sense for them.
Thank you very much. In order to be mindful of our time, I'm going to go ahead and formally close our Q&A session. I would like to once again thank Shauna for her great insights. Thank you very much, Shauna.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ernie. Happy to be here.
And I'd also like to once again thank our webinar partner, Tipalti. We appreciate their commitment to thought leadership, which is evident in the great content and resources they offer. Many of them were on the additional resources page. And I would like to also encourage the audience to take the short survey right after the webinar closes down. We certainly need your feedback to get better. And finally, to you, our audience, thank you so much for your valuable time today. Make the rest of your day great.